In a recent AMA video that I did, I had a question about why I don't watch movies anymore. And I don't, as the last 2 years or so, with rare exception, I really don't watch movies anymore. And I wanted to get into detail about that in this video, specifically the problem with strong female woke characters, which is a topic that has been talked about a lot on places like YouTube. But in this video, I'm going to analyze this in a slightly less hysterical way, in a way that I don't think you've heard of before.
Alpha Male 2.0. Freedom-focused lifestyle design for men. We do 5 videos a week here on how to make both your business life and woman life more free, because you need both. If you subscribe to this channel, leave a like on this video, and leave a comment on this video, you will automatically be entered into the regular drawing for my online video course on how to create location-independent income, normally $1,400. We regularly announce the winners at the community feed at this channel.
One of the problems with today's movies is the insistence on placing strong female characters. And the problem is not that there are strong female characters. Strong female characters can be good. Strong female characters actually can be great. And the reason I know this is because Hollywood used to be able to write strong, mainstream, leading female characters in badass action type roles and do it well. Back in the 70s and 80s and very early 90s, Hollywood was actually able to write these kinds of characters. We had Ellen Ripley from the Alien movies. You had Sarah Connor in the Terminator movies. You had the Linda Carter version of Wonder Woman in the 70s. You had, even Princess Leia, you could argue, was a strong female character. Wilma Deering from the Buck Rogers movies and TV shows way back in like 79, 1980. She was so hot, by the way. That was so funny. You guys are my age or older if you remember. I remembered that when I was like 12, 11 years old, watching the Buck Rogers movie and staring at Wilma Deering like, oh my God. But anyway, you can write amazingly cool, badass, and believable, strong female characters. You can do it. And I'll explain exactly how to do that in a minute. But first, let me demonstrate the problem. So here's an easy example. I'm gonna put your brain in a certain place. Let's take the movie Aliens. So I believe 1986. Aliens is one of the best science fiction movies ever made. It's one of the best action movies ever made. It is, in my opinion, one of the best movies ever made. It is a perfect movie. I was lucky enough to actually see it in the theaters in 1986. I was a freshman in high school back then. I was blown away. I've watched it many times since then. I'm blown away every time. I showed my daughter that movie a few years ago. She was blown away at how amazing that movie is. It's a perfect movie. It's awesome. And obviously, I don't need to tell you this. I'm sure you've seen it. Let's say there was a scene in Aliens back in 1986. So place yourself in a movie audience in 1986 watching Aliens on the big screen, okay? Let's say there was a scene in that movie where the soldiers, the Marines are walking down the hall and Ripley's kind of in the back, and Ripley pushes in front of the soldiers. She pushes in front of the Marines and grabs a gun and she says, "You guys are stupid because you're men. You need to let a woman take charge." What would have happened to that audience? What do you think the reaction would have been in that audience? I can tell you what would have happened. They would have laughed. People would have laughed out loud. It would have been hilarious to see something like that. It would have been so strange and out of character and nonsensical. And by the way, the women in the audience would have laughed too, and that's an important point. It's not just the men would have laughed and the women in the audience would have said, well, yeah, women are strong and badass too. Yeah, no, the women would have laughed too. They'd be like, what the fuck is she doing? Why is she saying that? What does it have to do? What does the fact that she's a woman have to do with any of this shit? What a stupid thing to say. So fucking dumb. But yet, you have seen pretty much that exact scene in many movies and many TV shows over the past 5 to 10 years, haven't you? Matter of fact, some TV shows are riddled with that scene over and over and over again, like shows like Doctor Who and things like that, the new version of Doctor Who in the last 5 to 10 years. I have seen that scene many, many times in different contexts, and I think you have too. Matter of fact, in some respects, with some TV shows and some movie franchises, scenes like that are almost the norm. Let me give you another example. Let me give you another scene from Aliens. Let's say there was a scene in Aliens where Ripley is running down the hall, and the aliens are chasing her, and she trips and she falls. And there's 3 aliens, and they come up, and they're gonna eat her. They're gonna rip her to pieces, right? And down the hall, one of the Marines sees her and goes, oh my God, let's say it's Hicks. one of the characters in that movie. He grabs his gun, grabs his plasma rifle, and he runs down the hall to rescue her. And just as he's about to get there, Ripley leaps up, and she grabs one of the aliens and punches it in the neck and rips his head off and throws it against the wall. And then another alien comes at her, and she grabs it and twists its arm and snaps its neck and flips around by its tail and slams it against the wall. And then the third alien comes up, and she's like, fuck you. And she grabs it and he puts it in a headlock, and she goes, and cracks its neck and throws it down on the floor. And then these aliens are dead at her feet. She stands like this. And Hicks comes up, and just as he arrives, he looks at all the dead aliens, and he goes, oh. Can you imagine what the audience reaction would have been if they actually saw that in that movie in the 1986? Again, including the women. People would have roared with laughter. It would have transformed the entire movie into a stupid slapstick comedy. People would have said, what the fuck is this? It would have been fucking hilarious. Yet, you have seen that exact scene in different contexts in many different movies and TV shows. Those goddamn new Star Wars movies, there's at least 3 scenes like that in those new movies. You know what? Let's take another example of that same scene. There's a scene in Terminator 2, right? Where Sarah Connor is being pinned down by 4 or 5 bad guys in the mental hospital. And, you know, the main guy says, hold her down. And he's going to stick her with the syringe to put her to sleep. And Arnold the Terminator is walking down the hall to rescue her, right? It's one of the best scenes in the movie. Let's say that instead of what happens in the movie, instead, just as Arnold is about to arrive, Sarah Connor, she's pinned down by these 5 guys. And let's say she says, fuck this shit. And she goes, like the Incredible Hulk. And she goes, rah! And all these guys just fly off her and slam against the walls. And she leaps up. And she grabs a guy and she punches him in the kidney and punches him in the chest. And goes, and knocks him out. And then another guy grabs at her, and she grabs at him, and she like holds his arm, and you can see his big giant biceps because he's like a 250-pound guy. He's like 7 feet tall, and you see her little tiny skinny spaghetti arm, and she says, fuck you. And she cracks his arm in half. He goes, ugh! And she throws him against the wall, and she beats the shit out of all these guys, and they all fall down, and they're all at her feet, and she's like standing like this, you know, and she has this look on her face like, who's next? And Arnold comes up, the Terminator comes up and goes, oh, you don't need to be rescued. You are strong. And she's like, let's go. And she walks down the hall like this, swinging her ass, right? And she walks right past him and he goes, okay. And he just follows her down the hall. Can you imagine the reaction the audience would have? Can you imagine the reaction you would have watching that movie? It would be so insane and so funny and so nonsensical, yet you have seen that exact scene I have in many, 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 many movies over the past 5 to 10 years, and TV shows, mostly movies for that one. Can you imagine? That's the problem. So it's not that we have strong female characters in movies and they're bad. They're great. Ellen Ripley and Sarah Connor are 2 of the best characters you've ever seen in movie history. In my opinion, certainly Ellen Ripley. She's amazing. So that's not the problem. The problem is how these characters are written and portrayed in these new, modern, stupid movies. I could give you many examples of this. I already have given you many examples of this at my blogs when I've talked about these scenes over and over and over again prior to 2018 when I stopped talking about movies because I stopped seeing movies. One of the more egregious ones is the series a year or 2 ago called Batwoman, which if you watch a lot of YouTube videos about movies and TV shows, you've probably seen a billion angry YouTube videos from guys about this, on how stupid it was, and how woke it was, and how left-wing it was, and how silly it was. Now here's the deal, and this may surprise some of you. You could make a Batwoman TV show, or movie, but let's say TV show because that's even harder. You could make a Batwoman TV show starring a woman, 90-pound, 5'4" lesbian, because that's the character of Batwoman, right? You could make a show starring that character and have it be awesome. And I would really, really like it. You could. You could. Now, that's not the show now. I watched that show the first 10 minutes, I turned off. It was too terrible. And I saw some synopsis of that show. It was awful. So I'm not talking about the show as made. I'm saying you could, if you wrote her correctly, the way they used to write strong female characters, you could make a Batwoman, for example, TV show that would be badass and actually be really, really, really cool. You could do it. Here's how you do it. Number 1, have her keep her gender out of the dialogue. Never let her say, I'm a woman. There's a scene in that stupid Batwoman TV show, it's actually the tagline of the show, where she says something like, and I'm going to butcher this wrong, she says something like, you know, that Batwoman suit would look better on a woman. If you want to make a good, strong female character, never refer to the fact that she's a woman. Did you ever see Ellen Ripley say, I'm a woman. Did you ever see that? Can you imagine watching a Fast and Furious movie and The Rock walks out and says, I'm a man? No. What does that have to do with anything? So don't let her ever mention the fact that she's a woman. That's fucking dumb. It doesn't make any sense. How many women do you know in real life? And I know a lot of women. And I don't know any women, How many women do you know in real life, in normal day-to-day life, who are not heavily involved in politics as a way of making money? Let's exclude them. How many women do you know who walk around saying, I'm a woman, and I deserve respect, and I do things better because I'm a woman? How many men do you know who say, I'm a man, and I'm a man because I'm a man, X, Y, Z? No. So if you want a cool, strong female character, don't have her ever talk about the fact that she's a woman, because normal fucking people don't talk about that in real life. They just don't. And it sounds stupid when you do it. Number 2, don't let her say anything bad about men because they're men. She can attack men, she can disparage men, she can stand up to men. Ellen Ripley did that a lot. That's perfectly fine. But you'll notice that characters like Ellen Ripley, Sarah Connor, they stood up to men and they stood up to women too. They didn't just attack men for being men, they attacked women also. And they didn't attack men for being men, they attacked individual characters for the problems of those characters. If a guy was stupid, they said, stop being stupid. If a guy was being cowardly, they would say, stop being cowardly. They wouldn't say, oh, you're so stupid because you're a man. This is all over modern day TV shows. The new Doctor Who is riddled with this stuff. Stop having strong female characters put down men because they're men. That's fucking dumb. If there are bad men or stupid men or cowardly men in the story, great. Have her call out those men for those reasons, not because they were born of the penis. Number 3, and this is a big one, and if you've read the Caleb Jones blog historically, when I used to talk about movies a lot more often, you know I ranted about this for years and years until I got tired of repeating myself and tired of seeing it in movies. Only have strong female characters defeat men in ways that are actually physically possible. So, you do not want to have a 90-pound little woman beat the shit out of 4 different guys who are 200 plus pounds and are a foot or 2 taller than her. This happens in just about every fucking movie you see these days, and I'm at the point where I'm so tired of seeing it, I just want to leave the movie theater, or in some cases just turn the TV off, what have you. It's just so dumb. Now, there are many ways in which a woman can defeat a much bigger man. Let's go through some of them. Matter of fact, I know this because, going back to the Batwoman example, a lot of people understand that the DC movies are pretty shitty, right? The Marvel movies are good, the DC movies are pretty shitty, the DC TV shows, Batwoman is one of them, are also pretty shitty. But what a lot of people don't know is there's a series of DC animated movies that just come out on video, and most of them, with some exceptions, are actually pretty good. They're actually really good movies. I have many of them. They're great. And there's a scene in one of those movies from a few years ago, and I'm going to get the scene a little wrong. It's not exactly what happens, but pretty close, where Batwoman is on a scaffold and Batman is right next to her. They're on this high scaffold in some kind of abandoned warehouse, and a bunch of bad guys are approaching. And Batman turns to Batwoman and says, no killing, because Batman, right, doesn't kill people, right? And Batwoman says, yeah, whatever. And she pulls out 2 pistols and starts firing them and blows these guys' heads off. I went, oh, cool. That's fucking cool. That's badass. That's cool. That's a strong female character that I like because she's doing something a woman could actually do. A small 90-pound woman could pull out some guns and blow the heads off of big, strong men. That makes sense, and it was cool. So you can do this right. Matter of fact, let's talk about how to do this right. How could you have a Batwoman cool TV show defeat a bunch of men who are much bigger than her? Well, one thing is, give her knives, give her blades, have her costume have blades come out of it, have her use knives and swords and daggers, have her kill dudes. By the way, I believe that's comic book accurate too. Batwoman actually kills people. Great, that's very cool. Unlike Batman, Batwoman is a little more of an emotional character than Batman, so she's not beholden to these codes like Batman is. Really interesting, really cool. Have her go into the darkness, out of the darkness, and slit guys' throats. Fucking cool. That would be badass. That'd be great. And yes, you could do it on TV. You just have to keep the blood down a little bit. Fine. Have her kill people that way. Have her use guns, like in the cartoon. Fucking great. Have her have pistols and shoot guys. Great idea. If you want to have her defeat guys physically in physical combat, have her use stealth techniques. Instead of walking up to a guy and just beating the shit out of him, which would be stupid, have her hide in the darkness, just like Batman does, and come out of the darkness and quickly like stab a guy or punch him in the back of the knee and then run off again. And kind of these hit and run attacks. That would be really neat. Can you imagine how cool it would be to have a cool Batwoman show where there's 3 or 4 big guys with guns in like an abandoned warehouse, and she defeats all these guys using nothing but stealth, bladed weapons, and or guns. That would be neat. Instead of trying to be a tough guy and acting like a man and walking up to them just beating them up with their fists, which is fucking dumb and doesn't make any sense. Number 4, keep politics out of it. This last stupid Wonder Woman movie where the villain was Donald Trump. As soon as I saw that in the trailers, I'm like, oh my fucking God. So on Christmas, like a lot of people, Pink Firefly and I unfortunately watched that new stupid Wonder Woman movie, and Donald Trump is the bad guy. And you're like, are you fucking kidding? The Wonder Woman in the 70s, the Linda Carter version of the Wonder Woman, never went up to a bad guy and said, gender equality is awesome, and then break his face and then fight a bad guy who looked like Ronald Reagan or something. How stupid would that have been? And it's just as stupid as today. So if you want strong female characters, keep the goddamn politics out of it. Did you ever see Wilma Deering or Princess Leia or Sarah Connor or Ellen Ripley or any of these badass females from the 80s talk about politics? Right wing or left wing? No, they kept fucking politics out of it. At the bare minimum, what you could do is you could refer to politics, but be smart about it. One of my favorite TV shows of all time is a show called Deep Space Nine. It's one of the Star Trek series from the 90s. Fantastic TV show, minus the first 2 seasons. Excellent show. And occasionally they would talk about politics, but they wouldn't beat you over the head with it. They wouldn't stare at the camera and say, Republicans are evil. They wouldn't do that. It's not what they would do. Instead, they would refer to it in a smart way that worked with the story without bludgeoning you over the head with it. So if you really want to talk about politics, do it in a roundabout way. That's fine. But don't beat people over the head with modern, over-obvious and over-stupid political references with your strong female characters. That will immediately turn off at least half the audience. Fucking dumb. The bottom line here is that you can have strong, badass, female action hero characters in movies and TV shows where it actually looks cool. You can do it because I grew up in the era, the 1980s, where they did it all the time and it worked. It made perfect sense. So it's not that you can't have strong female characters. It's that Hollywood doesn't know how to write strong female characters anymore. They become caricatures of female characters, like in this last fucking Harley Quinn movie, and the last Charlie's Angels movie, and the last Terminator movie, and the last Predator movie, and it's just on and on and on and on and on. You can do this if you write them correctly, which I know is very difficult for Hollywood these days. That's my take on that. If you want more help with your Alpha Male 2.0 lifestyle, you go to joinsmic.com. Or in the meantime, you can click here for why women have more power in relationships than men, or you can click here to see where you fall on the alpha scale. I will see you in the next video.